Welcome to our strategy series. My name is Allie Adler, and I am an educational specialist at the Kennedy Krieger Institute. I work as part of an interdisciplinary team in a day rehabilitation program for children and adolescents with a variety of diagnoses and conditions, including acquired brain injuries. This video series will focus on providing educators knowledge about classroom strategies to help children and adolescents who have sustained a traumatic brain injury and may struggle with attention, memory, executive functioning, and emotional regulation. Those are just a few of the areas that may be more challenging after a TBI. Unfortunately, there are other areas that we don't have time to go into during this series. This overview will hopefully be a starting place for many of you, and with the knowledge you have gleaned here, we hope that you will feel more empowered to help a student of yours optimize the potential in the classroom. In this segment, I will be discussing executive functioning and strategies to consider using in the classroom. I plan to discuss compensatory strategies the classroom teacher can use to help the student with difficulties in several key executive functions, including organization, working memory, problem solving, and initiation. There are numerous definitions for the term executive functioning. Executive functioning does not refer to one particular skill. Rather, it is an umbrella term that includes a collection of interrelated functions. These functions are responsible for purposeful, goal-directed, problem-solving behavior. Executive function relates to the highest level of cognition. Such behaviors include judgment, awareness, and making decisions. In order to manage executive functions, a student will need to initiate behavior, inhibit other behaviors, select relevant task goals, plan and organize, problem solve, be flexible, and monitor their own behavior. From a neuroanatomical standpoint, executive functioning skills are primarily mediated in the frontal cortex of the brain. There is communication with other parts of the brain, including those that control spatial, visual, and verbal skills. Please refer to the neuroanatomy module by Dr. Danielle Plotz for a more detailed explanation of brain function. There is not a lot of evidence-based research on executive functioning strategies in children who have sustained traumatic brain injury. There are a number of studies on adults following TBI. I have included some strategies that have proven effective for adults and are used with children, but research studies have not been conducted and therefore not validated among children. Most of the strategies discussed in this module are based on informal diagnostic clinical work with students following brain injury. I hope you will find them as effective in working with your students as I have in working with my students. There are a number of evidence-based computer programs that are used in a rehabilitation setting, but they will not be discussed here as the focus will be on school functioning. Unfortunately, there is no magic pill or magic solution to cure deficits in executive function. Therefore, I'm going to provide a set of suggested strategies that when implemented correctly is hoped to yield improvement in both process and content in the school setting. So what does it mean to implement the strategies correctly? The first step, of course, is to ensure the proper strategies are documented on the IEP. To conceptualize the best way to ensure success of the strategies, I recommend referring to an acronym titled DREAMS. D is for direct instruction. It is important to provide direct instruction to the student in how to use the strategy. Additionally, there will need to be R for review of the specific strategy. I recommend errorless learning of the strategy. It is important to always be consistent of the strategies and provide modeling. In order for the strategy to become automatic, it will most likely require systematic intervention to promote overlearning. We cannot just hand a piece of paper to a student with a strategy for it to be effective. We must incorporate the concept of dreams. There are several aspects of organization that we use in our daily lives to help us bring order to it. A person needs to be able to organize thoughts and ideas to make sense out of them. In addition to organized thinking skills, we refer to organization in a clerical sense as well. Can the student maintain order with supplies, locker, and notes? Can the student stay organized with homework, responsibilities, and assignments? At school, there are two main areas a student needs to master: content and process. Students need to learn the content which is taught by the teacher. Additionally, there is the process in learning the content. Typically, this comes naturally to students. However, students with deficits in executive function will often have difficulty with both process and content. Specifically, for students with organizational deficits, from a process standpoint, the student may have difficulty with writing down homework in the correct place, remembering to hand in the homework, keeping track of assignments, and overall staying organized. While memory may be an additional area of difficulty, it may not necessarily be so. Rather, the information may not be being stored in an organized and systematic fashion, and therefore the information is not readily accessible. A deficit in organizational skills will also cause difficulty in the content areas as well. Both written and oral expression require one to organize thoughts and arrange them in a systematic fashion. Without a proper means to organize thoughts, the student will have difficulty sequencing steps that are required throughout the day in reading, math, and written language tasks. Students with organizational difficulty have difficulty focusing on the main idea and often get stuck on the details. The strategies that we will be reviewing can either be used as an accommodation, where the teacher in essence is acting as the organizer for the student and ensures the tasks are completed, or alternatively, and certainly more effective for lifelong independent skills, is to use the strategies for remediation. In order to do this, more time will need to be directly spent on teaching the strategy to the student. As a teacher and working with a student with organizational difficulty, we need to teach task analysis, how to break down the task into specific sequence of steps. The first strategy I will discuss is called Goal Plan Do Review, coined by Dr. Mark Yildisacker. I will review it in greater detail when we discuss problem-solving strategies, but for the purpose of organization, the student needs to understand what the task is at hand and what is needed in order to get it done. Another widely used organizational strategy is the graphic organizer. These are found to be very helpful in assisting a student to organize his thoughts for reading and written language tasks. Depending on the task, there is a Venn diagram for comparing and contrasting, a sequencing chart, and a story map to help visually understand the organization of the story. Another type of organizer is an advanced organizer. This is helpful to use at the start of the class to help the student organize his thoughts as to what is happening in class. The goal is to provide an overview of the topic and steps to be completed in class for the day, like a daily class agenda. Many of us are familiar with a school agenda book and a calendar app on a phone or a tablet. These tools are critical to be taught and checked for accuracy for a student with organizational difficulty. Standing at the front of the room and reminding the students to write down the homework, or in older grades, just having it written down on the board will simply not be enough. The student with organizational difficulty will need daily check-ins. This time can be used for a variety of purposes. Number one, to ensure the student wrote down the homework in an agenda book or a calendar app. Additionally, the teacher is encouraged to teach the student to set an alert to remind the student to complete the homework at a designated time. The check-in can also be used to ensure the homework is placed in a designated place, such as a homework folder. A backpack check can be used at this time as well to ensure the correct items are placed in it and taken out is also recommended. A locker checklist has been very effective in reminding the student what to bring into class and what to take home. When given a multi-step task or a long-term assignment, it will be important to work with the student in following a checklist for what is needed to be done. along with a date due by each step. Teachers sometimes provide students with a rubric. This is very effective, but for the student with TBI, the rubric will need to be reviewed with the student to teach them how to use it effectively. The student should check off each item as it is completed. Due to the disorganization, students often have difficulty with time management. Timers and alerts are helpful in keeping the student on track and on task in completing a given assignment. Working memory is another executive function. It requires a person to hold information in mind for the purpose of completing a task. This is essential for carrying out multiple tasks and could be as simple as listening to a direction and then carrying it out. A person with difficulty with working memory may lose track of what they are doing or may have trouble starting a task because they forgot what they were supposed to do. Some people with difficulty in this area may repeat a phone number over and over again until they are completing the dialing process, as they have trouble keeping it in the mind to manipulate the information. Working memory provides a mental workspace to hold information while mentally engaged in other relevant activities. The ability to do this is crucial to many activities in the school environment, including carrying out learning processes, completing content assignments, as well as social activities. The student may need to hold on to several directions while completing the first direction. From a content perspective, the information to be remembered may be the sentence that they intend to write while trying to spell an individual word. When a student is engaged in conversation with a peer, he will need to hold on to what he wants to share while listening to what his friend is saying. The ability to hold information and manipulate it is required for reading comprehension, math, written expression, and many other areas throughout the school day. There are a number of ways in which classroom teacher can assist the student with difficulty in working memory. From an accommodation perspective, we will want to reduce the working memory load. We can do this without modifying the instruction. Rather, we are simply putting the student on equal footing with a peer with greater ability to hold onto that information. The easiest way of reducing working memory load is to provide the student with a copy of notes in advance of the class. This will allow the student to follow along with the instruction and refer to the notes to be able to engage in classroom discussion. At times, I find teachers will provide the notes, but after the fact. This is not recommended, as it leaves the student at a loss during the class discussion and in-class assignments. I encourage you to provide a written list of directions to the student. This could be on the board or on the paper. The student should be shown the directions and reminded to refer to the directions throughout the completion of the assignment. Numbered directions will make completion of the task easier. For lengthy reading assignments, the teacher is encouraged to chunk the reading load and provide stop and question prompts throughout the reading activity. Additionally, a mnemonic can reduce the working memory load as it requires the student to remember a single word or phrase which will prompt for the full task rather than having to keep all the directions in mind and items at once. From a remediation perspective, helping the student turn the working memory task into long-term memory and into a procedural, more automatic task can be effective. Some of these strategies include multimodal approach to instruction, helping the student visualize the task. For example, having the student close his eyes and picture himself going to the locker and hanging up his coat and taking out the science book. Self-repetition and teacher repetitions are also helpful, as well as teaching the student to make an association. Initiation is also under the umbrella of executive function and is a frontally mediated behavior which requires the student to get started. It's the key being turned into the ignition, the go button. Initiation is starting an activity or thought process. you may see that for certain highly desired and motivating activities, the student requires less prompting to complete. This does not mean that for more challenging and undesirable tasks, the student is purposefully not getting started. Someone who has impaired initiation should not be confused with or assumed to be procrastinating or being lazy. The biggest impact for you as the classroom teacher is that the student with impaired initiation will have difficulty getting started on tasks. This is the student who may enter the room and sit down at his desk with his coat on and backpack on and not do anything. When reminded to take off his coat and put away his bag, he will do so, but then return to his seat and sit down, while the other students may be engaged in conversation or be doing a free time activity or getting started on a morning task. Once engaged in a task, the student will work on the task. But if he is confused or distracted off task, he may not be able to initiate asking for help or be able to independently return to task. When finished with the task, the student may simply sit at his desk with his assignment in front of him, but not initiate the next task or state that he has completed the first task. We need to help the student to start tasks using external support. Ideally, we want to teach the student to have an external prompt that does not rely on an adult in order to increase independence. However, initially, the student will need prompts to implement the strategy, and depending on the severity, he may need adult support to get started. External strategies include a visual timer or a visual alert. The advantage of an alert is that a written message can state what exactly the student needs to do. Alternatively, having the name of the task on the desk with an arrow on it pointing to the task can be a visual reminder of what the student needs to do as well. The student may also require a verbal or gestural prompt, such as the teacher pointing to the assignment as a reminder to get started. Additionally, the teacher may have the steps to the morning routine as an acronym or mnemonic, and when the student enters the room, the teacher could question the student, "What do you need to do?" or simply state the acronym or mnemonic, such as to get their coat, lunch, and supplies, or point to the word. With practice and overlearning, this can become automatized, so it can become less of an executive task and more of an automatic procedural task. It will be important for you to monitor your student's work. While the student may be sitting quietly at his desk, appearing to be working, he may have stopped and be unable to restart without a prompt. Another executive function is problem solving. Solving a problem generally requires a person to set a goal, plan, review, and adjust as needed. For most people, this is an automatic process, particularly for relatively easy tasks, such as figuring out what to do if you need a pencil. For students with TBI that have impaired problem-solving skills, the task is not automatic, and the problems become obstacles, impeding the person from success. The difficulty can be anywhere along the problem-solving process, from awareness of a problem to difficulty forming a plan or recognizing readjustment is needed. Carrying out a task typically requires one to follow the direction to complete it. However, if there is a problem along the way, it can cause the task to be not completed, not be completed fully, or be completed incorrectly. Additionally, problem solving is tied to self-monitoring skills. If the student is not aware of an error or lacks the understanding that an error exists, then the student won't be able to solve the problem. Problem solving is also tied to prioritizing, being aware of what needs to be done and determining a hierarchy approach to the solution. In working with students with difficulty with problem solving, it is almost as if there is a big question mark looming over their heads when confronting a problem. Problem solving is a higher level executive skill and requires the combination of other skills to carry out the task, including awareness, planning, and organizing. Given that this is such a complex skill, it will require a lot of review, modeling, errorless learning, and fading prompts to promote success. While there are strategies to address this area, it is more from a remediation standpoint by working on metacognitive thinking skills, such as, is this easy or difficult? Do I know what to do, or do I need help? These type of questions help the student address awareness. There are a number of goal, plan, do, review formats. I am going to show you a relatively simple one, but there are other forms that spend more time on concepts such as prediction and more review questions. The first step is identifying the goal. Ask the student questions such as, what is the goal? What are you trying to achieve? What do you want to have happen? You can then ask your student to name a possible obstacle that could stand in the way of achieving the goal. Questions to pose to the student under plan include, what is the plan? What do you need to do? Do you need help? Under the do section, the student will complete the task and record anything that needed to be revised. In the review section, ask the following guide questions. How did the task work out? What worked? Did anything not work? What could you do differently the next time? This task is a time-consuming process, but over time, students have learned to complete these worksheets to help organize their thoughts and prepare for possible obstacles along the way of completing a task or assignment. This could be completed with an inclusion special education teacher or in speech-language therapy sessions. The important thing is you need to designate ample time to address the problem-solving tasks. As an accommodation in the classroom setting, if there are time constraints, the sheet could be provided to the student completed. However, this would not be ideal. Specific time needs to be set aside to directly address these metacognitive tasks to help the student become a better strategic thinker. Another problem-solving technique is called PQRST. This is a graphic organizer that addresses problem-solving skills. PQRST stands for preview, question, read, summary, and test. The student is taught to preview the text by looking through the topic, such as looking at the headings, or in reading a novel, perhaps reading the summary at the back of the book. This gives the student a heads up for what to expect. Q is for question, at which time you guide the student and encourage the student to ask some questions. This is followed by R for reading, at which time the student reads the text. S is for summary. To help the student summarize the information, you may provide diagrams or have the student record a summary of the text. The last section is T for test. At this point, you have the student see if he could answer the question posed during step 2. While this task certainly reinforces reading comprehension, its focus is to help the student problem solve and complete metacognitive thinking skills. Another problem-solving strategy is if the teacher notices the student struggling, she can approach the student and state, this seems to be difficult, or you seem to be having a problem. It's a problem because, and help the student problem solve why he's having difficulty. And then offer a solution by stating, maybe you could. You can then offer praise and reassurance by stating, that was hard to do. I'm glad it worked out. There are a number of problem-solving script questions, such as, what are my choices? Which is a better choice? Which can be used to help problem solve the situation. When given a number of assignments, or when a student is given a long-term assignment, some prompt questions include, what should I do first? Why? It would be helpful to review this with a rubric and checklist. to help the student understand how to prioritize the assignments and why they should be completed in a specific order. For example, you can explain to the student, this assignment is counted as 5% of your grade, while this other assignment is counted as 20% of your grade. Or, this assignment is due tomorrow, while this assignment is due in 2 weeks. In summary, in order for strategies to be effective, we need to remember to implement dreams, provide direct instruction of the strategy, review the strategy, provide errorless learning, always be consistent, provide modeling, and systematic intervention for activities in order to promote overlearning. It will be important to ensure the strategies are provided on the IEP as an accommodation as well as a direct goal. This way, we can collect data and monitor its effectiveness. Learning strategies, particularly in these higher level areas, will require direct instruction. It will be important to monitor the effectiveness and slowly fade out adult support as possible. There will need to be designated staff and time in the day that is dedicated to address the goals. The strategies will need to be implemented across the day with staff trained in its proper use and implementation. Teachers play a key role in helping students with TBI succeed in the school environment. The school team must work together to develop a comprehensive plan based on the student's strengths and weaknesses. With careful planning, it is hoped that your student will overcome his or her cognitive challenges through direct intervention and accommodations. Thank you for your time, and I hope you found the information helpful. If you are interested in learning more about brain injury, please go to the Kennedy Krieger Institute's brain injury website found at the end of this video. Be sure to watch our other videos on strategies for supporting attention, memory, and emotional regulation.